Welcome to EDU's 723 Assignment 2, Coaching Feedback by Jennifer Montoya. In this coaching feedback meeting, I will be working with Savannah, a 5th grade teacher. We will be exploring a lesson that she taught around conversions and determining her action steps. Hi Savannah, how are you today?
I'm good.
Thank you so much for inviting me into your classroom. I appreciate you reaching out for some coaching support. Did you get a chance to watch the recorded lesson?
I did.
Okay. And what do you think went well in your lesson, and what do you think are areas of improvement?
So I thought the students did really well listening to directions when I gave them certain things to do throughout the lesson with the word search and then the responding to the questions that I asked. Some things that I thought could be improved was I felt like they really didn't understand what some of the terms were when we were going over them after giving them the word search.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I saw that they were quiet, especially as they came in and they greeted you. So it looks like you have a good rapport with them entering the classroom. I also heard you say that you had spent some time planning out the word search, and I know that's trying to put in a lot of effort into your plans is helpful. I would agree with you of just the things that you noticed about the areas of improvement of that they didn't understand. And I kind of also think that maybe as we explore kind of why, maybe when we think about the standards that you're trying to cover and what are some things that are actually aligned to the standard that might be helpful to deepen that understanding.
Okay.
In this portion of the feedback meeting, we will discuss the SBI coaching model. We'll identify the situation, behavior, and impact to learning. Well, following up with our discussion about how the lesson went, we're going to look at our SBI coaching model.
Okay.
S is for situation, and so that's just kind of a capture that we can create to determine what happened. And I think when we look at the lesson and based on what we discussed, that the lesson probably was not aligned to the standards, and
Okay.
so the students struggled with the tasks, and then also the students weren't engaged in their talking. So what I want to show you right now is this is our district look-fors. So there's 4 look-fors, and there's teacher actions and student actions or behaviors. And I want you to take a moment, I'll give you some time to look it over, to see what behaviors maybe were present in your lesson, but also what behaviors might not have been that would have proven that maybe the students weren't engaged and the tasks not aligned. So take just a moment to look over the look-fors.
Okay.
All right, so what are some behaviors that you think led to the students not being engaged or the lesson not being aligned to both from the teacher side and the student side?
I'm so sorry. Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, so what are some behaviors or actions that you, looking at our look-fors, maybe were not present in your lesson that would have led to that lesson not being aligned and also the students not being engaged?
So I think the teacher modeling and demonstrating how to apply a skill and by providing examples and even non-examples could have probably helped them to understand some of the terms a little bit better.
Okay. Any other things that you see from the student side that maybe were behaviors that you saw that were maybe negative to what the outcome you wanted?
So they were really quiet and they were able to answer some questions well, but other questions, nobody would raise their hand. And even when I would call on them, they said that they didn't know. And so some of the things here that I see being able to use academic language and interactions with their peers might have helped them to better digest some of the information.
Yeah, I definitely would agree with you. I think when we're planning, and that's going to be part of our action step, that when we don't have a line lesson or the students aren't engaged, the impact that we see is that students will leave that lesson without learning it. And then we've created a bigger gap for them. And then when we go to the next lesson, they won't have a foundation. So really want to think about in our action plan that we're about to set up is that impact, making sure that we are creating a lesson that they're engaged and that also that learning will transfer into their long-term memory to be able to communicate through different assessments.
Okay.
In the next section of the feedback meeting, Savannah and I explore her action plan, identifying 3 different action steps to help support her in the instruction of this standard. Well, based on our review of your lesson and going through the SVI, our next steps would be to an action plan.
Okay.
And so I've kind of thought about the different things we discussed, and there are 3 steps I think that are going to be helpful in your action plan. Okay, so we'll go over them, and then I want to see what you think about those and going forward.
Okay.
So I think the first step that's going to be important in our action plan is the actual lesson and what you plan. And so for that, we're going to look at our Big M, which is our standard document. We'll look at our achievement level descriptor document that helps us understand tasks at every level, because in Florida there are 5 different levels that questions can be asked. We're also going to look at the pacing guide to determine what are some tasks that we can develop for our students that are aligned to the standard and the rigor that they're going to be assessed. So that's step 1.
Okay.
Step 2 is going to be around how to incorporate collaborative discussion and collaborative structures. And so for that step, I'll give you an article and a couple of video examples of collaborative discussions and strategies that you can watch, and then we'll talk about, and then we'll even rehearse that so that you feel comfortable in delivery. And then the third step would be on circulating around the room. The importance of that, we think of zone of proximity. And so because those are 3 kind of big steps, I think it's going to be important for us to chunk that out. So first, what do you think about those steps?
I think they sound great.
Okay, so next week what we're going to do is on Monday we'll deal with step 1, and then I'll give you a couple days to work with that, and then on Wednesday we'll talk about step 2, and then on Friday we'll do step 3, and then next week I'll come back into your classroom with the district look-fors that we utilized and your lesson plan to record your lesson again, and then we can meet to debrief. Okay,
sounds good.
During this portion of the feedback meeting, which is taking place on Monday, we'll be focusing on action step 1. All right, Savannah, well, how was your weekend?
It was great. Thank you
Good.
for asking.
Good. Well, before we left our action planning meeting, I gave you a couple documents to work on our step 1 of your action plan, which is on developing a standards aligned lesson plan. So the first one that we're going to talk about is the Big M that Florida has created to help outline the standards and give instructional tasks. So did you get a chance to look at it this weekend?
I did.
Awesome. So as you looked at it, what are some of the strategies or tasks that you saw in the Big M that you think would be helpful to put in your plan for this coming week?
So a couple of things that I just took note of were some of the clarifications on what I do and do not need to teach within the standard. And then going off of that, I also really liked here it mentioned that students need to have actual practice with some of the tools to be able to see the difference in the measurement visually before applying it in their brain.
What would that look like, do you think? What are some things that we'd have to bring into the classroom for that to happen?
Yeah, so, well, here it mentioned using like 3 rulers to show a yard, that it's the equivalency of a yardstick. So I thought that was a really easy way to be able to show that. So yeah.
Okay, awesome.
Was there anything else that you would think of?
No, I think when we think of like that metric conversion, also what I notice in the Big M is that this standard is around using multi-step word problems, but when we look at the vertical alignment, we see that the basis of the conversion is back to 4th grade. So as you plan tasks, we might want to have some questions that we ask the kids to kind of tap into that knowledge from last year. What do they remember? And then as you bring in the different tools for measurement of how making those comparisons, just visually looking at it, a cup to pints and then also on that metric side of things.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. And then after that, a couple things I noticed that I really liked was beginning with the problems, basically without the numbers in them, before inserting the numbers for them to find the solution so that they fully understand what's happening in the word problem. And then I really liked this section about all of the misconceptions, so ways that I can look for where they may confuse something and be able to address that.
Yeah, I think knowing ahead of time kind of those pitfalls that students are going to have is going to be helpful in your lesson because you can kind of plan for that and know. So why don't you jot down a couple notes of some tasks that you think that from the Big M that you would like to incorporate for your lesson. So I'll give you a moment to do that.
Right?
Also, when we think of conversions, sometimes giving kids ways to remember those instead of just notes are going to be important, but like mnemonics. So when I think about the metric conversion and we think about understanding going from kilo to in those prefixes to and all the way to centi and the unit, are there any mnemonics that you can think of that might be helpful or jingles that a kid would remember from maybe your own past of learning conversions?
I do not. I will just use the reference sheet.
Okay. So one of them, when we think about the metric, is King Henry doesn't like, or let me say it correctly because I don't want to say it. I wrote it down for us. So when we think about the metric, it goes from kilo to hecta to deca to the unit to deci, centi, and milli, and that's hard for the kids to remember that. So we can think of King Henry doesn't usually drink chocolate milk.
Okay.
So that they can remember the order, because with metric conversion, the order matters as the unit gets bigger and then the unit gets smaller, and comparing back to that base unit. So that's one that might be helpful to give the kids. I found a couple YouTube videos that has it as a song that we can play for it. Also, when I was looking at the Big M, where students have to identify when they are going from big to small, what operation that is, and small to big. So there's different mnemonics and rhymes. I used big to small, you multiply all, or big to small, you multiply if you want to help them with body language. And then small to big, I always said divide the pig, or that they divide. Okay, so something that can help them, especially as they're working through the conversion, that you're asking them those questions. Okay, what operation are we doing, and how do we know to do that? All right. Anything else you think from the task or any of those rhymes that we might include?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. All right. So the next thing that we're going to look at, just as we're evaluating the tasks to make sure that they're aligned, is to do that backwards design to look at the assessment. And so this document is provided by the state. It's the achievement level descriptors. And what it does is it shows that standard from a level 1 or a level 2 all the way to a level 5. And so I'll give you a moment just to kind of read the difference between the different levels of types of tasks for this particular standard.
Okay. Trying to write on this.
Yeah, please do.
Okay.
Awesome. So what do you notice about that?
So I noticed from a 2 to a 3 that they're working with whole numbers here, but they may include decimals and for a level 3. And then I noticed for a 5 that they have to be able to find errors in different problems and find where the error was within the measurement.
Definitely. So when we're planning, we want to make sure that when we look at the tasks, are we including the spectrum to support our students, and that we're giving them the opportunity all the way to that level 5. They may not be comfortable on their own to do that, but that might be something that you do in small group with some students as they rotate, to be able to give them that practice. All right, the next thing that we're going to look at, I'll give you a moment. This is the assessment for topic 9 that deals with M11 for conversions. So take a moment, and what I want you to be thinking about is there anything else that you can think of that you might need to include in your tasks or instructions that may trip students up once they get to the test that you want to plan for? So just take a moment for that.
Okay, so two main things that I see is that I definitely will need to show them some of the abbreviations that they're going to see for different measurements, so that they know what those abbreviations are. And then the other thing that I noticed, not necessarily related to this, but that they have a lot of review questions on other skills as well throughout the test. That when teaching, being able to incorporate those skills back in and review some of how that ties to the metric system now, but then also reviews previous skills they've learned this year.
Great. I'm glad that you identified that. All right. So what we're going to do is I'm going to give you a couple days to kind of iron out more of the tasks, and then we're going to come back together on Wednesday.
Okay.
The other thing I want to give you is we in our action plan we talked about planning, but then we also talked about the engagement of students to increase that rigor.
Mm-hmm.
So we plan tasks. Now, how do we implement those tasks?
Okay.
So over the next couple of days, as you iron out some of those tasks, I'm gonna give you an article around student engagement, especially with learning strategy or structures that help students to be engaged with each other, so that they're doing the cognitive thinking versus you talking at them the whole lesson. That you're kind of giving that ownership to them. So there'll be an article and then a couple of videos to show as examples that I want you to watch. And when we come back together on Wednesday, we'll talk about how to implement that into your lesson.
Okay.
All right. We'll see you in a few days.
Alrighty, sounds good.
Savannah and I will now focus on action step 2, which is focused around collaborative discussions and structures that help increase student engagement. Hey, Savannah. Happy Wednesday.
Hi.
How are the last 2 days been going for you?
They've been going better.
Good, good. All right, so we're going to follow up our conversation from Monday where we did step 1 and we talked about planning. How did that go for you over the last couple of days?
It helped a lot, actually.
Okay, and then I also gave you a couple articles and some examples for collaborative structures for students and strategies to help increase the engagement. Did you determine on any of them that you'd like, that you want to try?
I did like some of the structures to be able to do to increase their interactions between each other. And then also the sentence starters, I think, would be really helpful to help them get those discussions going.
Okay, and which one do you want to use for the structure for this lesson that you're planning?
So I really like the one where they're given the question and they have time on their own to process it, and then afterwards they're able to share it with a partner.
Okay, and how do you think that's going to increase their engagement?
Well, they're going to be able to, everybody will be talking to somebody at some point versus just like a couple of kids answering the question, or maybe even just one kid answering.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when we think about kids being able to engage in a lesson like that, it breaks up the novel. It keeps it novel for them. So it's not just one thing for the long time. It also helps minimize downtime for them so that they're able to go from writing something to then discussing that topic to then maybe defending that topic and then back to maybe a new problem. So it keeps that pace moving and their engagement high so that they continue to learn. So good. Well, another thing that's helpful is to kind of rehearse, because I know like you don't want to just get up in front of your kids and do the lesson for the first time. Do you want to rehearse any of those structures that you're thinking about including? And I can be your student for you?
Sure.
Okay. All right. Which one do you want to rehearse?
Whatever you think is best.
Do you want to do the where we talked about the 3-root strategy with annotating and then how we share back and forth?
Sure.
Okay. So let's look at that. Okay, so you're the teacher, I'm going to be the student. So let's walk through how you would help students through that annotation and how you would have them do that right and then share out with each other. Okay? And I can pretend this is my math problem for today.
Okay.
Okay.
So we're going to go ahead and take a look at this word problem together.
Okay.
And the first time we read through it in our 3-read strategy, we're just going to read the problem.
Okay.
All the way through.
All right. Okay. I've read the problem.
Okay. Can you find in the problem where the question is being asked?
Yeah, I see that at the end here that asks about in the beginning of the story, the child was had 6 gallons of water, and the question was how many pints of water did he have to use, and did he have enough water to begin with?
Okay, awesome. So in our 3-read strategy, we'll go ahead and circle where the question is being asked. Awesome, great job. All right. And now we're going to go through and do our second read of the problem. And this time we're going to look for any information that can help us solve the problem.
Okay.
As we're reading through it the second time.
Okay, so I see again, they begin with gallons, and now the problem is asking about pints. And I know that it doesn't go from gallons to pints. There's something in the middle for that conversion.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna write that.
Alrighty. Great. All right. And then we're just going to read through it one more time. And this time we are going to see if it's going to be more than one step to get to our answer, or if it's just a one-step solution to get from what they're asking to what we need to know.
Okay. Well, I know based on what we've been learning that if we go to gallons, then we go to quarts, and then we go to pints.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to require us to do more than one step.
Yes.
And I also remember from your instruction about the big to small, so I think I'm going to multiply.
Great job.
Very nice. Good job. How did that feel for you?
It was a little uncomfortable, but it'll get better.
Well, and now you can think about it that your first time doing that is not in front of the students.
Mm-hmm.
That you had that time that you can be thinking about maybe how to tweak it and how to keep that engagement. What I would probably recommend is also thinking about making sure that they're turning and talking. So when you ask a question, give them that wait time.
Okay.
And then have them turn and talk and talk using those sentence frames of what they think, and having their partner respond to them if they agree or disagree and why, so that they can make sure that again you're changing up that pacing, that engagement, so they stay with you and they're not just waiting for somebody to give them their answer.
Okay.
So great. All right, so our next step, our final step, is going to be on Friday, where we come back together and we talk about circulating. And so what I want you to do is I'm going to give you an article. It is from Teach Like a Champion by Doug Imhoff, and that strategy walks through why we circulate, because I know when I was in your lesson, and you even mentioned it, you sat for a long period of time, the kids were off task, and when you're closer to them and you're walking around, they're oftentimes more likely to stay on task. So we're going to look at that once you get a chance to read that article. Okay? All right. Well, I will see you on Friday. The final session of our coaching feedback meeting with Savannah is to focus on our action step 3, which is about learning how to circulate around the classroom in order to increase accountability and also to allow Savannah time to provide feedback to students. Welcome to Friday. End of the week. How's your week gone?
It's been really good. Thank you.
Good. How have you been feeling about the planning for this lesson that's coming up next week?
A lot better than how it started.
Okay. Good. All right. And did you get a chance to read the article about circulating around your room?
I did, yes.
Okay. What were some of your takeaways from that article?
So the biggest thing I realized was that students are a lot more likely to be engaged if I'm more present around them. So that would probably be my biggest takeaway.
Yeah, absolutely. When it holds them accountable because you're walking and you're listening to them, so they're more likely to be less off task. Also, it gives you the ability to hear their thinking and to be able to intervene if need be for misconceptions. And also, if you're starting to hear the same thing over and over as the kids are talking to each other, you can kind of do a full class reset, stop. Maybe you need to do a reteaching lesson, a small one. Or if there's just a couple kids, you can kind of take note of that and then pull them to your back table during a small group. So it's kind of a win-win for them, and then also for you to gather that data about, are they learning the topic. One of the things when you first start doing that, especially if you're used to and comfortable kind of sitting at your desk, is to actually create a plan, a walkway plan, and you can vary it But at the beginning, kind of making sure you have a plan, your desks are set up so that you can move. Because if they're all close together, you are going to be like pushing kids out of the way. You don't want to do that. So I just kind of made a diagram of your classroom, and when you're thinking about circulating and kind of listening to what kids are saying, usually you want to tend to go to the ones that you know will be done first so that you can address those and give them the next steps, and then be able to get to the kids that maybe are behaviors or maybe need some more time processing, so that you give them that time to process. And like I said, with behaviors, of you can keep your eyes on them even when you're working with another student and they see that eye contact,
Okay.
that you are monitoring. So let's look at this and think about what's a good pathway that you could use next week when you have your lesson on the conversions.
Yeah, so I think if I started somewhere back here and
And you can draw on it.
okay, if I went through here
Okay.
and checked on these students first, and then came back around maybe up this way, and then came down through here last to allow these students extra time to think. That way they have enough think time and time to answer the question before I get to them.
Absolutely. And I think, again, that's going to really help to keep the pacing and to help you be able to determine the next steps. So, are they ready to move on? Do you need to do some reteaching or maybe small group for that lesson? Well, great. Well, thank you, Savannah. So, what we're going to do is I'm going to have you put all this together. So, we'll just kind of remember our step one was our planning for standard alignment. So, we did that on Monday. Then on Wednesday, we talked about the collaborative structures and we got to rehearse those so that you felt more comfortable.
Yeah.
And then today was about circulating and being up and moving and the impact of that. So, next week, what day do you think that you might implement this lesson that we've planned?
Probably Tuesday or Wednesday of next week.
Okay, so I'll come back to you on Tuesday,
Okay.
and my look fors are going to be our 4 look fors that we talked about, that we reviewed, and also I'll use your lesson plan so that I can give you some action feedback, and then we'll meet to collaborate and take our next steps in our coaching cycle.
All right, sounds great. Thank you.
Thanks, Savannah.
This concludes the coaching feedback meeting with Savannah, a 5th grade teacher.